So why invest in property? Is it worth it? It's a good question. And I did a Monday night webinar, YouTube Live, and hopefully I'm going to keep saying YouTube Live just to repeat the process so you guys can really join me on that, because I quite felt lonely. There was only 30 clients on there on Monday. Some great questions on there. I'm not going to repeat what they are. They're already on the Facebook group, so you can have a look at that later on, and indeed on our YouTube channel as well. But on that session, I always do this section called In the News. And I look at the past week in terms of what's been said in the press. And it was all quite downhearted, and buy-to-let is dead, and there is no point investing in property. And I kind of think, well, I used the phrase, I didn't use my phrase, I paraphrased what Warren Buffett said in terms of, whilst people grow greedy, you should grow fearful. And equally, whilst people are growing fearful, you should grow greedy. So I kind of think, we should be looking at that saying. And this market that we're currently in is very negative, I think is a word. If you look at the media, people buying properties a bit more downtrodden because of Brexit as well, not just the tax changes, but Brexit as well. And the thing is, why it's not the right market. I think that's a great opportunity for you guys to now invest in property. We're looking to buy a property, and as a result, because it's now, I believe, a buyer's market, we are able to go in real cheeky low offers, and people that need to sell will sell at that price. I'm not saying you should take advantage of disadvantaged people, but I do think it's worth putting in cheeky offers, and if those people accept it, it's a free world. They don't have to accept your cheeky offer. And I think the professionals who are negotiators will always go with a low ball number. They expect the seller to kind of pump up the numbers a little bit, and that's fine. But equally, it's about buying properties now. And I do think it's a great buyer's market. I think there's fantastic returns of buying in property. I'm going to share with you some of the things. I'm just going to move this out of the way. It's really annoying me now. It's great. So I'm just going to move that down here. I think that there's good reasons to invest in property. I'm going to share with you why. I think there's capital growth in Nottingham and the northern areas. We are experiencing capital growth, and I do think we're going to see that capital growth even through Brexit. With the volume of sales maybe going down right now, and that's because people are a bit skeptic of the whole European thing. What's going on? I mean, if the government don't know, how on earth do we know? And equally, could it just fizzle out now? I'm not sure right now, but people are nervous about buying property, but I do think there's capital growth. We are on a small island. We're on a small island, and therefore the growing population, there's more demand than supply. Irrespective of what the government said about building houses, house prices will go up. So over time, I still think there's going to be capital growth. Maybe not as much as we used to see in the 80s and 90s, but certainly we still get that. It can replace your income. So albeit the tax changes, Section 24, have come about, I do think that if you've got things like HMOs, people are now doing holiday lets, which generate fantastic amount of income. I do see a lot of people being able to replace their 9-to-5 job. A bit of note on this is not to give up your job. I see people immediately giving up their job before they've replaced their income from property. And that's a huge mistake for me. I think Jim Rohn is a great author on this, and he always talks about make sure that your part-time job earns you more money than your full-time job. And in this regard, I would say make sure you wait until your property income is so sufficient that it starts to overlap your main income. And that might take you some time, but at least whilst you're working, you can get a mortgage. When you give up your job, what kind of proof of earnings have you got? And if you're doing your tax right, you're not going to be making profits on your income on your residential properties, which means you can't get a mortgage anymore. We've seen that happen with quite a few clients. I'm not going to mention names, of course, but we are seeing that happen quite a lot. So make sure that you wait. Additional income. Property, yes, it's been taxed at 45 or 50% or whatever else, but if you've got good income from your property, which I think you still can using different strategies, I think it can give you additional income, far more than banks and bonds and gilts and shares, in all honesty. It can help you invest your risk, to spread your investment risk. And what I mean by that is I don't think we're in a world now that you should just rely on property investments, not just residential anyway. I think you could mix it up by investing in commercial properties, maybe looking at residential properties. Obviously, that's what you guys are doing. But maybe start to look at other types of investments, whether that's business activities. You've got a head on your shoulders, a good head on your shoulders, a good skill set. Maybe you should support it. And what I talk about in our own business is that we have a business that generates enough income for investments to be made, which is then good for capital, but it's also a great supplement of income when the business activities doesn't do so well. So make sure you bounce this around. Don't just go into property full time. Spread your skill set and make a living out of that. I think properties, residential properties, commercial properties can create a legacy for your children. We are seeing a number of clients that are looking to do that. My heating fans just gone off, and it's apology if it's really loud. This is a Mac, so it shouldn't make any noise according to Steve Jobs, but clearly it is. So where was I? Yes, professional, get back. Create a legacy for your children through property. Property values will increase in value, and that means that you can pass over those assets to your children, which gives them a good head start in life. Do be careful with this though, because we have seen a lot of children that have really complained about their parents who are stressed and lacking of time to spend with their siblings, simply because the property is getting in the way. So you do need to be a bit careful in regards to how much time you're spending property, because the children are resenting that. So you need to involve your children up front. You need to get them passionate about property, because if all you're doing is you're building this portfolio to pass on to your children, which they don't want, I think you're heading them in the wrong direction, because they'll resent some of the things that you might be doing. And holiday homes, let's not forget, you can buy properties which you can utilize as a holiday home. So Louise and I are looking to buy property in America, which we can then use as a holiday home. We can rent it out during other periods. Now you can buy a caravan. That's another one. We don't often talk about narrow boats. Is that what we call narrow boats, long boats? But narrow boats, you could have caravans, all property related, and don't have the 3% SDLT surcharge. You can use them as holiday lets, but you can use it as well. So how about mixing a bit of business with a bit of pleasure? Maybe that's good. I'm not sure. I'll let you decide this. But these are things that have been going through my mind of what you can do. Okay, why invest in property? So here's the graph I was showing. And this is from the ONS, so Office of National Statistics, and it shows the capital growth. So this particular graph, funny enough, came from National Building Society, but ONS is the one who actually got the data. And we can see property prices have gone up since 1975. Property prices will continue. We know that there's a spike in 2006, 2007, and then this crash. But ultimately, we live on an island. Property prices will go up. So I do believe that capital growth will exist in our world. Return on investment. So for anyone that's not sure what return on investment really is, the way I calculate it, by the way, and there may be some nuances about how people do this differently, but I would take the net profit, and this is net profit after, so you take your property rental income, less all your direct expenses, that's maintenance costs, that's your mortgage interest costs, that's for letting agency fees, gas utilities, if you're paying for those as a HMO. And you need to think about now Section 24 and how much mortgage interest that you can really offset. I would be purposely looking at net profit that's after tax, if you can calculate it as well, rather than just before tax, because tax is such a big cost. How can you ignore it? So I would kind of now state to look at after tax profits is how you should do your return on investment. And then you divide that by your total investment in that property. So you talk about your acquisition costs, so typically your deposit, any fees that you've paid in terms of the purchase, the refurbishment costs that you've had, which are tend to be capitalized, and then you would kind of get your ROI. Now, banks give you what, 0.01%? Maybe some banks are doing 3% now, but typically I'm seeing average rates of interest of 0.01%. What? I think you've got to be looking at more sensibly where you put your money. Property can go from 0%. Let's not forget, you can make a loss on your property portfolio if you're not careful. But it can be infinity, because you could refinance your property, which means you've got no money tied into your property. If you have a deposit, let's say £50,000, you refinance, which helps you extract another 75,000. You are now £25,000 net better off, and you've still got a property that's giving you an income. So for me, that's a great source of return on investment. Do I do that? No, I don't, by the way. I'm happy to keep a sensible return on investment. I don't like debt, if I'm honest. I do try and pay that down. It's something that maybe me, in my head, debt is not always good, and to try and pay that down. But that's my own personal opinion. That's not something that I would say clients should always agree on with me. The return on investment basically is a lot better in property than it is doing it in terms of anywhere else. So in terms of bank interest, you're not going to get the same amount of ROI. So that's basically that. Is it worth investing in property? Look after loved ones and family. We talk about, you might have a job, you might love it. I love my job. I'm not going to give up my job for property, that's for sure. I love doing tax stuff. I love doing this stuff and helping people as much as possible. Yes, it builds up a brand, but it also helps people. At least you guys are not disappearing off. So I'm hoping it's helping. But ultimately what you could do is, you can look after your family. So if you didn't want the property income yourself, you're happy with your job, it gives you enough income for your lifestyle, then maybe you could be looking at property to give it to your kids in the future, some of the income to your kids, etc. If you're fed up with your job, then clearly you might want to give up your job, maybe 2-3 years down the line, once you've had enough of the property income coming through the door. That allows you then to give up your job and not to have any issues with it. So there are many, many ways, again, for your family reasons why you should invest in property. These opportunities through property don't exist by buying shares, in my opinion. There are some shares that give you dividends, but nowhere near the amount that you can get from property. And let's not forget, control is a key thing here. You have control of the investments you make in a property, where you invest your money in property, so location-wise. You also control the asset itself, so the tenants that are moving in, the standard of your refurb, and the amount of rental that you get, your control of the finances. Now, if you have shares, you have none of this control, and therefore that kind of is diluted for me in terms of owning shares. Why should I own shares in someone else's company when I could earn and generate capital for myself and my family, because it's in my control? Obviously, we talk about state pensions now, and this is for properties in the future. So your property may not be there for giving you an income right now. Again, if you love your job, just like I do, by the way, I mentioned this already, if you are at some point thinking about, well, I'm going to have a burnout rate. I know that I personally won't retire ever because I kind of don't want to. I really don't want to. But there are people that want to target a retirement date from their JOB, and that's absolutely fine. And at that point, they may look at property income as being their source to provide for their lifestyle. Now, if you look at state pensions, we're looking at 164.35. I think that was quoted when I've been doing these slides, which is equivalent to £8,500. I mean, really, is that going to provide for your lifestyle when you've been used to £50,000, for instance? Well, that's going to be a major shock to you if you're relying on the state pension. I appreciate some people are investing in pensions elsewhere, ABCs and employment-based pensions, but even if you added that to the state pension, would it give you the amount of income that you're looking for? And to be fair, I don't believe it will. So property can be an alternative source of money for you when you retire. Something else that you should really, really be looking at.